The code is immutable. The money is
The Genesis is locked to the edge of the mempool. We are decoding Bitcoin's signal in the noise. Privacy, self-custody, censorship resistance. Welcome to the revolution. This is OnChain Revolution.
Welcome back to OnChain Revolution. My name is Yagobi, and I am the host of this channel and show. We got a lot to get into today, guys. The main topic that we're going to talk about, and I'm going to give you guys my insight and where my stance is that Bitcoin actually put out a warning signal last week. I'm not sure many people know about this, but people that dive into analytics and things like that probably saw that there was a trend that was pretty rare that happened last week. We're going to dive into that. It happened 2 times before. This will be the 3rd time that it occurred, but we're going to dive into the similarities of those time frames and then also where I stand on it and what I think is going to happen next. That's going to be a fun time. Before we get into anything, I want to welcome back my TikTok audience, as well as my abstract audience and my Zora audience. I got to reset this really quick. Same thing with abstract here. But as always, guys, put your questions and comments in the chat and I'll get to them. I did see your comment there. Superfan says, GM. What is up, Superfan? Excited for tomorrow's segment as well. But like I said, right, we're going to get into the main topic, and that is what is that trend that happened that was really rare? And then we're going to hit on some other topics as well that's happening. Not a ton of news going around the crypto space today, but we're going to hit on El Salvador buying Bitcoin continuously. That's what they love to do. We're also going to talk about some whale inflows. There has been a little bit of a change from ETF outflows to inflows, so that's a good sign. We'll get into that, and that's going to connect actually back to the main topic there. And then, of course, we're going to start the show off with the market pulse. But before we do any of that, I'm going to ask you guys to help me out. And if you're on the YouTube side, hit that like for me. And then also subscribe to the channel if you like my style and my content. Same thing with abstract. If you're new, welcome to the show. Hit a follow if you like my style, and then Zora as well. But let's get into that market pulse, which is how we kick off every show. And we're going to see what the market thinks. This is the first live day to trade for the U.S. stock market. And also, I want to say happy Chinese New Year's, I should say, to my Chinese audience. I celebrated Chinese New Year's with my wife, as she's Chinese, and her family. We do that every year at their house. So it was definitely a good time with good food and all that stuff. And hope you guys are enjoying your Chinese New Year as well. But let's get into the market pulse here. Let's take a quick look at what's happening in terms of the market calendar. We did hit on that briefly yesterday. There's not much to really get into here, but we'll check it nevertheless. It is Tuesday, so not much happening, right? You do have Fed Governor Michael Barr speaking today, but that's not going to be much. I think really what people are going to be waiting for is the initial jobless claims. That's going to come in on Thursday, and then Friday, the GDP. That is the big event that people are going to be looking for, right? And to see what kind of numbers we get for this on Friday morning. So that should be big there. And then some other kind of events that could be affecting the current markets, or this one definitely is the partial government shutdown. It enters the 4th consecutive day. So Congress is still not getting their stuff together here. And they seem to not be ready to flip the switch to turn the government back on, right? It is a partial shutdown, but still, nevertheless, that is going to negatively affect the markets there. And then Friday, there is an opportunity, I should say, for the Supreme Court to actually maybe try to push the decision on the tariff situation. Polymarket still has this as a 25% chance that the Supreme Court rules in Trump's favor for the tariffs, which this is a weird situation, I feel like, because I feel like they're dragging this along. It seems like they just keep kicking this decision down the road. And it's almost kind of like the society, or the public believes that the Supreme Court's going to rule against Trump. And if it's like this dominant, I wonder why it's continually being kicked down the road, right? Nevertheless, if they do rule not in favor of Trump's tariffs, I think that's going to be a big hit to the financial markets. Some people say they think it's going to be a relief rally because we kind of go back to how this globalist type of approach worked for America, right? The past 20, 30 years, and the economy is going to thrive from it. But we'll see what happens there. But let's check and see what the markets think about everything that's happening right now. All right, so let's check and see here. Bitcoin is showing a little bit of a rebound here, but we're going to start with the stock market like we always do. The S&P is pulling back 0.28% there. You have the NASDAQ pulling back 0.51%, Dow Jones pulling back 0.18. So out of the index funds, the Dow Jones seems to be one that's not getting hit, as bad. And then you're seeing the VIX pop up here, 5.24%, meaning that we're experiencing some volatility. Probably expect that a little bit more if the government shutdown continues, right? The DXY is up 0.39%, the Russell down 0.3%, and then the Magnificent 7 down 0.55%. You got NVIDIA up 0.11%, Google up 1.6%, and then Apple up 1.47%. You got Tesla pulling back 2.8%, Netflix pulling back 0.86%. The futures are down as well. You got oil pulling back 0.8%, and then silver pulling back 5.7%, 4.7%. And then crypto and commodities getting hit pretty bad. You got Bitcoin pulling back 1.5%, Ethereum pulling back 0.4%, and ETH hasn't been getting hit as bad as Bitcoin. It definitely has shown more resilience the past week or so, but you are seeing gold getting hit pretty hard, pulling back 3%. It is at 4,888. So I mean, it's definitely retracing for sure. And then silver getting back into the low $70 range, pulling back 3.74% there. So all in all, it looks like the markets don't like what's happening with the government shutdown, potentially a decision that might be made this Friday towards the tariffs. Just not a really good feel to kick the week off, right? And this is the first day for the U.S. market to open. So we'll see how the rest of the week goes for the U.S. market. But Bitcoin and crypto was open yesterday. It was a thinner liquidity environment, but we saw it pull back, decently yesterday, right? And then overnight tried to pull back up. And right now, in the last 2 hours, it's showing a little bit of strength, pulling back almost to 68,000. So we'll see if we can have a continuation with that. Just like yesterday, guys, whenever we go through the price action and crypto bubbles, if there's any tokens you want me to take a look at, just drop them in the chat. You can drop them in the abstract chat, the TikTok chat, or the YouTube and X chat, and I will definitely take a look at them whenever we go over price action. But let's get back to the main topic of today, and that is Bitcoin possibly shot a warning out last week, and we're going to get into that, right? We're going to get into that, but before I show that chart, I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about what I mean by this, right? So Crypto Quant, I got to give Crypto Quant credit. Definitely someone that you should follow if you're into data analytics and those type of things. But he confirmed that Bitcoin entered a top 5 realized loss event last week, going from February 6th to the 13th. And it's a top 3 to 5 event in that kind of category of all time, right? And every single time what happens after that event happens, there's a similar trend, and we're going to get into that, right? First of all, the situation that I'm talking about is the lowest ever fear and greed reading ever recorded happened last week, right? So you're talking about it hit a 5, right? Which was the lowest ever. And then 2 other situations join that, 2 other time frames. You're talking about November of 2022 when FTX collapsed. It hit a 6, which was a historic low at the time. And then in May 2021, extreme fear was, I believe it was maybe at an 8, but it was a historic low at that time, right? And those are the 2 time frames that these other two metrics kind of fall in as well. So it's May 2021, whenever we had the COVID bull run, right? Manipulation, it came down, everybody got terrified. And then in November 2022, FTX collapsed. And then we're talking last week, which is crazy because people aren't paying as much attention, I feel like, with, you know, some of these records that are being hit. Each event hit a lower floor than the last, right? So, you know, in 2021, extreme fear, I believe it was 8. And then you go to 2022, 6. And then 2026, last week, it hit a 5. We do have a couple comments in the chat here. Jason Sinkar says, GM, what is up? Glasshopper says, good morning. Good morning, Glasshopper. Happy Chinese New Year's, if you guys celebrate that as well. But going back here, so that first kind of similarity is the fear and greed meter. It hit the all-time low of that respective time period ever, right? So that happened 3 times, and the third time was last week. The second one was they were all in a spent output profit ratio, which means basically if you're above 1 for the SOPR, that means you're in profit. If you're below 1, you are at a loss. And all 3 were below 1 during that time period. And then the third similarity there was the top realized loss events in Bitcoin's history. So in 2021, in that week, there was a $14.2 billion all-time loss in that period, right? And then in 2022 with FTX, it was a top 5 event ever for that. And then last week we had $2.3 billion that were lost over a week as well, right? So they were a top 5 category for all those. So that's kind of the 3 metrics that put them together to kind of flash this signal, right? So now I'm going to kind of get into the charts here a little bit and show you what I mean. And then also I'll get into where I think, you know, things can kind of move from here. Let me get that chat pulled back there. Keep putting your chats and or your comments and questions in the chat, and I will get to those for sure. All right, so let's take a look here. So I have these areas right here on the Bitcoin weekly chart circled, and I have date ranges kind of spread out to where the collapse, the capitulation started to happen, and then when we started to move up. Okay, you go back here to May of 2021, and this is that first capitulation that happened after that first peak, by the way, if you remember, with COVID, where it was manipulated, that bull run. We had Bitcoin get to almost 69,000 during that period, and then people got extremely scared and capitulated, and you had that huge drop, right? That was the $14 billion that was realized loss, and then we went sideways. Right. But if you look here from when that first capitulation candle happened to where it started to move back up, you're looking at 10 weeks. There's 10 candles here. OK, now the second event that happened in November of 2022 with FTX's collapse, it was also a historic moment. Right. That's why it's one of these 3. You can see this first capitulation candle happened the first week of November. And it took 9 weeks for it to start to move back up. This one. So similar trend that's happening here. Now, the difference is that the first time it happened, we were at this kind of in the middle of the bull market, right? We had that manipulation in the summer for sure. That's when all that stuff started to happen. The second one that I'm talking about with FTX is in the bear market. So there's not a similarity in terms of if we're in the bull market or bear market, but what is similar is what happens after the capitulation events. And I think that's very important. So we're looking about 10 weeks afterwards before it starts to pick up. Okay. So right now where we are, if we're looking at this capitulation event, actually, I need to move this kind of back here because it's when it really started. If you use the 10-week date range here, that would put us at like kind of towards the 3rd week of March to get things kind of going the other direction, right? So I feel like a lot of that makes sense with what's happening right now with Bitcoin. If you look at, you know, the weekly and monthly percent returns, you have kind of like rare territory, right? For the monthly return, I didn't realize this, but the monthly return from Bitcoin's percent returns, this would be the 5th month consecutively. And then the weekly returns, I've been covering that, right? So this would be the 5th week consecutively. So one of those has to break, right, at some point and turn around. So getting kind of back in the other direction in mid to late March makes sense to me. And it could happen before as well, right? So that's kind of my stance on it. So, the fact that all three of these situations have such similar characteristics, right? When you're talking about metrics and you're talking about, the all-time low of the fear and greed, and then also like in the top 5 category with basically ROI loss, right? And so, what makes me feel like this is going to be another event like that? You got to remember that, institutions are still here. They're not leaving, right? Institutions are still here. You have all these institutions like Goldman Sachs, BlackRock, all that stuff, right? So they're still going to be here. Also, you just, you look at the history and the cyclical pattern, and it always picks up, right? The last 2 were 10 weeks. So even if it does go a little bit longer, it could be 12 weeks or it might be 8, right? But we could still be in that range there. That is for sure. What is up, Poet Babe? Welcome back to the show. And whoever else is watching on Abstract. So that is kind of where my thesis is and my stance. I think we're in this place that, right now Bitcoin looks beat up. People are, kind of poking fun at it, right? But that is whenever it's the best time to start acquiring it, to start DCAing it, because I've talked relentlessly about the 200 moving average and the fact that if it goes below that, it's very rare, and it doesn't go too much. Only time it happened is 2022. So we're in this range of, kind of close to the bottom, if not there almost, right? So it makes a lot of sense to, if you have conviction in Bitcoin, for me personally, to start DCAing. And that's where I'm at with it. I feel like we're in a good spot to get Bitcoin cheap, potentially a little bit cheaper, but eventually that's going to run away from us. So that's where I'm at with this situation. And that's my stance. I'm DCAing personally. And I expect a little bit of pickup probably in March at some point. And that's okay if it comes back kind of towards the 200-day moving average. I kind of expect that. But at least we can kind of get moving, because as of right now, it's been down only for the past 4 weeks. All right, let's get into some news now, and then we'll get back to some price action. All right, let's take a look here. Guys, if there's any coins, like I said, or anything you want me to take a look at, just drop it in the chat and I will definitely do that. All right, let's see here. Okay, so this is some good news here. And I want to make sure I find this. But the CFTC Chair Michael Selig says the crypto market structure bill is on the cusp of becoming law. So this is big because now you're having the CFTC as well kind of come back in on top of the SEC. So now you have both of these regulatory entities that are wanting to get the market structure bills done, right? They want to get it pushed forward. Versus before, whenever we had Gary Gensler and the CFTC was always, I felt like they were always kind of in the boat that was like, okay, I think we should probably move things forward for the crypto space and Web3 space. But the SEC was always the one that was kind of holding things back. Now you have an SEC chair that is very pro moving legislation forward. But now the CFTC, which they've been kind of quiet about it, not against it or negative against the space, but they haven't been speaking up as much. Now they're starting to speak up as well. So both entities are ready to move forward. And I think that's really, really good for the space. The space is going to change though, guys. It's already changed a lot, right? And, we're seeing a lot of changes that are happening. You see it on crypto Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. The discussions are changing. They're changing towards AI. They're changing towards RWA, things that institutions that work with the CFTC in terms of compliance and the SEC want to see moving forward. And so as regulation continually moves forward, expect to have more of, capital inflow towards these specific parts of the industry, right? If it's, the AI agentic industry or RWAs or, staking that is institutional, type of staking, that type of stuff, that's probably going to get more and more attention because more and more money is going to start flooding into those areas there. All right, let's take a quick look at some Bitcoin weekly returns. I know I have that somewhere up here. Give me 1 second. So this is something that I'm keeping track of right now, just to kind of see where we are and what needs to happen for us to potentially flip this, right? We've been talking about this for about a week. As you can see, we are on the 5th week consecutively with negative percent returns here. It's only happened 2 other times since 2014. So in a 12-year period, it's only happened twice, right? But the way Bitcoin looks right now, maybe it is going to happen a 3rd time, right? But one thing I didn't realize is that we're going on our 5th month consecutively as well, right? So you can see here, October of 2025, November of 2025, December, January, and now this would complete the 5 consecutive months. If you look back here in history, when was there another time that occurred? You got here in 2018, it happened from August to December and actually did 6. So there's 6 months of negative percent returns from 2018 to the start of 2019. But before that, there wasn't one. So this would be the 2nd time ever for this to happen, right? So it did stop after 6, by the way. So, I mean, there has to be a point where, you're thinking, if you're paying attention to Bitcoin's price action every single day or even on a weekly basis, that this has to flip at some point, right? And now we have 2 time periods that's like where, both of these kind of have to flip, right? So does it flip on the shorter kind of time frame of a weekly situation first? Yeah, it has to, right? And then you'll see it flip here. But I think that this kind of leads into what I was talking about with the main topic of today, of getting to a point to where we start to turn green again. But that doesn't mean that we hit escape velocity with Bitcoin. I think that comes later on this year. But we definitely have been beat down for sure for the past month and a half. So it's time for Bitcoin to get a little bit of a breather, and that could be coming up this week or next week. And I think that's highly probable. Now, if we do go red this week, we finish this week red, and we go red next week, then we're talking about another scenario here to where, I think it went 9 weeks straight with negative percent returns, but it was the only single time it happened. We would be in very rare territory if that were the case. So everything's kind of pointing towards potential end of this month, beginning of March, with Bitcoin to get, some breathing air again. All right. Speaking of Chinese New Year, started the show off with that. This is pretty cool and fun. You see Chinese New Year sees gifts and digital yuan to boost consumption. TradFi in Korea and Japan races to acquire crypto exchanges. Asia Express via Cointelegraph magazine. So they're reporting on this. But this is pretty cool because I got one of those red envelopes yesterday from my in-laws. But people are starting to send these red envelopes. It looks like, maybe it's kind of like one of those birthday e-cards that came out, in the early 2000s, I guess. But, it seems like they're maybe sending NFTs. I don't know what they're sending, but they're sending crypto for kind of like their gift for Chinese New Year. So I think that's a really cool thing here. I feel like the East has always embraced crypto and these type of things. So not too shocked there, but it is pretty cool to see that people are using it in unique ways, right? And I think this is a really cool way to kind of push crypto to become more mainstream, right? Because everybody likes those red envelopes. Everybody likes getting cash, and now you can get tokens instead that have value to them. All right. This one is pretty good. And if you guys have been watching the show for some time, you know that I have been talking about RWAs for quite some time. Last year, I could tell the space was changing, and, institutions were getting more and more control of, what was thriving and what wasn't. And I was just really focused on the RWA sector in terms of it's going to have a continual, I guess, strength to the upside, right? That entire industry is pretty obvious if you paid attention too, right? They're tokenizing everything, tokenizing gold. Gold's market cap was sitting at $4 billion before January this year, and it's over like $6.5 billion market cap. So it jumped over half of its total market cap in 1 month. But this article from the block says Ethereum's tokenized RWA market jumps more than 300% year over year as value tops 17 billion. Then it goes in here and it says Ethereum's tokenized real world asset market has topped 17 billion. And it says in value issued on its mainnet, so Ethereum layer 1. And then it says large players like BlackRock and JP Morgan continue bringing traditional funds on chain. The figure represents a nearly 315% increase from a year earlier, when the sector was worth 4.1 billion, and reinforces Ethereum's dominance as the leading blockchain for tokenized finance. Ethereum currently accounts for approximately 34% of total on-chain RWA value across all networks. Stablecoins on Ethereum mainnet have also climbed above 175 billion in aggregate market capitalization, underscoring the network's role as the primary settlement layer for tokenized dollar-denominated assets. So ETH is going to be a winner in RWAs. I mean, pretty much already is, right? And, I feel like you had entities like JP Morgan and these institutions that were pushing for ETH, for a long time. And now we're going to see Ethereum really, in my opinion, thrive because it's going to have so much TVL at some point, to where everybody's going to go to ETH for RWAs. They're going to know. Now there's going to be other, chains and environments that are going to thrive with RWA. I think Ondo is going to, have a lot of success because of who they're connected with. And then, you have these newer chains. We talked, I think we talked in my members only video, by the way, if you guys are interested in joining my YouTube's members only group there, I drop a members only video once a week, but I went into RWAs and these new projects and platforms that are coming on board now. And there's some coming from the East that are starting to get a lot of traction, right? You hear about stuff like Plume. That's a newer one. And a lot of them have like $50 million market caps right now. And they're getting connected with a lot of these institutions. So this is what I mean by like RWAs, like a sector that's just being overlooked because it's not sexy. It's not degen. It's not, your crypto native, what they're interested in hearing about, right? It's going to change to where that becomes more and more what they want to hear about, but it's not what they've wanted to hear about the past 4 years, right? They've wanted to hear about more of crypto native stuff that, DeFi, staking, and then you go on the other side of the degen side, right? Meme coins and all that stuff. But the industry is changing more towards being more serious, and RWAs is very, very serious, right? I got a comment here from the Acme. It says Bitcoin Mechanic on YouTube are so sure that they just destroyed ordinals and its potential with BIP 110. You're still worried. You're still not worried. They act so confident and are bragging what they think. They said, yeah, there's been threats multiple times about Bitcoin ordinals. Here's the deal. Like, even if they do run BIP 110, there's going to be ways to continually put spam on the chain. You're going to have to be strategic about it. But yeah, I'm going to look more into like how far they're getting with this, because, there's been several threats previously. They had threats with Ocean Mining, Luke Dash Jr., and all that stuff. But we'll see. We'll see if that happens. That'll be a sad day if that actually happened. But I have faith in the Bitcoin ecosystem community that really, pushes towards ordinals and art and assets on Bitcoin Layer 1, because it's the only chain that really hasn't scaled to, I guess, what the demand is asking for it to scale to. There's security reasons for that, that. But I think there's a way to do it safely and all that stuff. But we'll get into that. I'm going to look into that and maybe bring that up tomorrow or the next day. Probably the next day, because tomorrow we have our AI segment with Big Noodle. But I appreciate the comment. Keep those coming in the chat there. All right. So you can see this chart here back on this article about the RWAs on Ethereum. And you can see basically the dominance here. So this first bottom part right here is all Ethereum, and then provenance right here. This is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about, though. You know, provenance, right? Who talks a lot about them? I don't know many people that talk a lot about them, but I'm sure that this is like really connected to the TradFi world. I mean, they're right behind ETH, and then you go into these smaller ones. You got like Solana, ZK, Sync, BNB chain, and then others, right? But yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to look into provenance here. But yeah, so Robin is also coming on chain as well. But you can see right here, it also talks about BlackRock's tokenized treasury fund, the BIDL fund, which I think that's interesting that they named it that. It is very kind of crypto native. I like that they did that, at least. And it says it has emerged as the flagship product in the category, launched in 2024 via securitize. The fund invests in short-term U.S. government securities and has grown to become the largest tokenized money market vehicle on public infrastructure. So Ethereum, the winner there, and then we're going to see some more kind of emerge from that. And then you can see here, RWA tokenization has grown from 4.5 billion to 38.1 billion in just 3 years, despite market structure legislation remaining under negotiation. Dean Kahn of RWA says the genie is already out of the bottle. The need for tokenized assets is structural. As long as institutions see lower costs, faster settlement, and more liquidity, this industry will keep booming. And it will keep booming. Because they got the moolah, they got the money, right? They have the money to be able to keep it booming, and they will keep tokenizing. And so it's going to be interesting. When I did use Robinhood Testnet last week, when I was looking at the Testnet Explorer, I saw a bunch of RWA type assets in their Explorer. So just be ready for that. Be ready for that. All right, let's get into some price action for Bitcoin to see maybe if we can see where it wants to go for the rest of today into the next couple of days. We always start with Bitcoin's hour chart here, and this is where you guys can kind of drop some tokens that you want me to take a look at, if that is something you want to do. If not, no worries. But let's take a look at Bitcoin on the hour chart. The hour chart gives us a forecast of the next 2 to 4, 6 hours an outlook there. And as you can see here, the MACD is starting to break down in this out of the sell pressure, right? You're starting to see the fast line curl up here, right? And when this blue fast line crosses over that slow line, it's technically switching momentum. You're switching. In this case, would be switching out of sell pressure into buy pressure. You are also seeing the stochastic RSI come out of oversold territory. We're sitting at a 37 points right here. So we're coming out of that oversold area, which is the 20-point area, heading towards that middle, and then eventually what it wants to get to is the overbought territory, right? So this is happening based off of 2 green hour candles that we're in right now. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Now, we do have a little bit more to kind of come out of to really feel comfortable to say, okay, we're about to go into buy pressure right away. I think we need to see Bitcoin show some strength, maybe push up towards 68,000, hang out a little bit above 68,000, and maybe get to like low 68, mid 68,000s, and then we can start that buy pressure session. But it looks like it wants to head in that direction right now, right? Now, it did try to do that at 7 a.m. as well, and it got reverted, right? It came back down and sold even further. So we'll see if that happens. Now, we're further along in the stochastic RSI, so that does give me a little bit more confidence. So, I wouldn't be shocked if we work our way back to 68,000 for Bitcoin, maybe low 68,000s here in the next 2 to 4 hours, but nothing looks crazy at the moment. Let's take a look at the 4-hour chart here. 4-hour chart looks like it wants to come out of sell pressure, right? So this is kind of giving me a little bit of support, backing it up, saying, okay, for the next for the 4-hour charts, I believe the 4-hour chart does 2-day kind of 3-day forecast, right? And so, but we need to come out of this, right? So we need that 1 hour to really push up here and then get us out, and then that will show some strength and then push Bitcoin back up. Now, remember, yesterday we did have a kind of a weak pullback day yesterday, and the markets were closed, so there's more liquidity that's playing Bitcoin today. So we'll see if we can kind of get that. As of right now, we are in a green candle in the 4-hour, so we'll see if we can have a continuation here, pull us out, and then we'll see how we go into Thursday and Friday, heading into the weekend there. The daily chart here for Bitcoin is we're in buy pressure, but it is pretty weak, I must say. We are on our third MACD candle for the daily chart here, and it's not super strong. It's not aggressive. So I'd like to see this pop up and show some strength here. As of right now, it's just showing kind of a weak buy pressure session for the daily. So we need those lower time frames to really push us up. And with everything that's happening right now, we might not get that, right? Because, partial government shutdown, the macro doesn't look great. Now, like I said, eventually, whether it's this week or next week, I do believe we're going to flip like the weekly candle to green. But as of right now, the daily looks weak, and that can change though. That can change quickly. Maybe the government shutdown, ends, and we get some fundamental analysis headlines that become more positive, right, and push us up and give us that green. Because what we need to do to finish the weekly candle in green is be above 68,500. That's what we got to be above, right? We're sitting right at 68,000. We just crossed back over it. So it is early. It's Tuesday, right? So we still have quite a while to finish out this week here. All right. So that is Bitcoin. Let's take a look at Ethereum here really quick and see how ETH is looking before we get into the crypto bubbles. ETH on the hour. So ETH has been looking stronger than Bitcoin. And you can see here too, there's like this consecutive candle like strength. I know Bitcoin did have on the hour chart 2 candles as well, but ETH is just it's showing a little bit more pep in its step, right? It just started the buy pressure session as well, right, for the MACD. So that momentum is there. It's further along than Bitcoin is on both the MACD and the stochastic RSI on the hour chart. So we'll see if this has a continuation up here. It looks like it wants to definitely pop up. We are back over $2,000 as well. So I wouldn't be shocked we get to 230, 250, or 2030, 2050. Maybe we try to flirt if it has a continuation here with 2100. We'll see. We'll see what happens. So that is Ethereum on the hour chart. The 4-hour chart wants to come out. It's not out yet. It wants to come out of sell pressure. It's not there yet, but I'm liking what I'm seeing with ETH on the 4-hour as well. And then let's hop into the daily. Daily looks stronger. It looks stronger than Bitcoin's daily. You're seeing a fourth MACD candle here that's green, and each candle is bigger than the last, right? So, I'm seeing some strength from ETH here, and we'll see if it can sustain that. But I like what I'm seeing from all the time frames from Ethereum here. Let's get into the crypto bubbles and see how the alts are doing, and they're looking green. They are looking green here. All right, the top 100, we got one that's very, very red, and it's Pippin. Which token did I warn you guys about last week? I said, be careful with Pippin. Pippin is a meme coin. It's an AI meme coin that's been really running off of this AI narrative, I feel like, and it's down 30% on the day. It's sitting at $505 million market cap, but it is ranked, what is it ranked here? 80, right? There is a lot of whales that are kind of behind this Pippin meme coin, but it is so extremely volatile. Last week, it went to $580 million market cap. It pulled all the way back to like 430. So you just got to be careful with these type of newer meme coins that are just popping out because of a narrative and stuff like that, right? So Pippin is sticking out. It's down 30%. And then you got this stable token. It's called stable token. Is down 8.2%. And then, I'm not really seeing anything else in the top 100 just getting hammered. Pax G, I think that's like a gold type of coin, gold backed crypto, maybe a stable or something like that, is down 2.1%. You got Quant down 2.2%. And then so this is the stable coin that is the gold stable coin by Tether is down 2.1%. Outside of that, everything else is green. Everything else is green. You're looking at like a 95% green push up for the top 100. And, the biggest push ups, you got Meme Core here up 8.7%. You got Pi up 6.5%, Tau up 5.3%. Tau's definitely, going to show some strength because of the whole AI narrative. And they have like their subnet kind of sector that is, they're probably super excited right now. They have models that people are using too. I think like Shoots is a subnet that is in LLM, I believe, or some sort of LLM that people are using. And so, so they're probably that's one that I feel like will do well off of AI narratives, because Tau is a actual chain itself, and it has real projects that are, a lot of them come out of Silicon Valley, or they're from Austin, Texas, and they are building like serious things if you go look at the subnet versus like an AI meme coin, right? So Dr. Mien says, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Dr. Mien. Dr. Mien is one half of Big Noodle, and they're going to talk about some really fun, interesting things tomorrow for our AI segment. Welcome to the show there. All right, let's go back to the crypto bubbles here. You see Pump Fund. Pump is up 4.2%. XDC up 1.1% here. Virtual's up about 2%, Caspa up 2.6%, Morpho up 4%, Ondo up 2.4%, and Jupiter up 5% here. Let's look at the top 200 and see if anything is popping over here. All right. First of all, let's talk about what's getting hit. So Mix, which is a perps and leverage DEX that is on multiple chains. It's on BSC, though. It is getting hit kind of hard, down 20%. River is down 13.3%. River is kind of like an exchange where people DCA Bitcoin. My wife actually uses River. And so it's really simple, but they're down 13.3%. Falcon Finance down 3.1%. Hex down 2%. XPL down 3.6%. Which is the plasma token, which is for the token for the chain that is backed by Tether, the plasma chain. And then Monad is pulled back 4% as well. Layer 0 has another negative day, pulling back about 2%. I'm still bullish on Layer 0, though. They're heavily looked at right now by institutions, but they did have a second negative day in a row. Courtney Johnson asked about this one yesterday. It's up 12.7% here. And then Immutable X up about 4%. JTO up 21.5%. You got TWT up 11.4%. Frax up 6.4%. CVX up 7% here. And then Sonic blockchain up 6.2%. Jasmine coming in up 3.4%. And I think some meme coins down here as well. Dog Whiff Hat up 3%, and then Starknet up 1.7%. But that is Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the alts for you guys. And yeah, that's kind of where we are, right? So it looks like at least ETH and the alts are showing a little bit of strength. Bitcoin kind of too, 2 consecutive hour green candles. So we'll see how it continues for the rest of today. All right, let's take a look at some more news here. We got, this one is pretty big. So you got to be careful about unlocks, because once they start to get really piling up here, I hate how this does this. Give me 1 second. Okay, perfect. All right, so March is to see the largest token unlock in 2026 at over $6 billion. $6 billion of unlocks are happening in March. That's a lot of money. And it says 3x the monthly average according to CryptoRank. So let's pull this chart up. And you see right here, Cointelegraph reported this. March to see largest token unlock in 2026. Now, if we pull this chart up, you can see how much more on average it's happening in March. maybe that's why the timeline's so quiet, right? A lot of these builders aren't posting as much because maybe they don't want to see comments in their posts talking about, you know, how big is your unlock, how big is your unlock, or whatever. But you can see right here, in February, we're expecting $2.18 billion of token unlocks. And then in January, we had almost 3 billion, and we are going to double that in March, right? So it's kind of like, you know, are these holders? First of all, I think it's important to know, especially if you're in tokens that have unlocks like this, right? Is a large percentage, are they VCs? What kind of investment groups are kind of, you know, that bought in early? Who's holding most of these, right? Are they, you know, community members that earn these? Because that makes a big difference, right? If it is more community members, then, you know, there is a higher chance that they'll probably hold a little bit more. If they're VCs, there's a very high chance, in my opinion, that they're going to dump, because VCs currently are at like all-time losses, right? With a lot of their investments from 2025. It was just not a good year in 2024 or 2025 for VCs at all. And so that's where I think there's a concern, right? Does the alt market, and it's going to be a little bit more, I think, in the more risk on areas, right? The newer DeFi, the newer type of platforms, are those going to get hit in March? And then maybe some of the established, you know, like blue chips and stuff like that benefit and you know, go into that maybe. We're going to find out very soon here. Patapoo says, sub, what is up, Patapoo? Patapoo, I'm curious about what your opinion is about the BIP 110 information, supposedly, and this is a comment from the Ackman 135. A lot of these, you know, Bitcoin maximalists are celebrating that BIP 110 is coming, you know, it's like locked in or something, and it's gonna get rid of Bitcoin layer 1 assets like ordinals and stuff like that. I'm curious about your opinion, what you think about it, because you are, you know, you've been an OG in the Bitcoin ecosystem for quite some time. But welcome to the show. That yeah, I'm definitely curious what you think. I think it's gonna be kind of probably a nothing burger, but I don't know. I'm hearing more and more that they're getting more and more confident there. All right, let's take a look at this headline here. El Salvador continues to buy Bitcoin. So I was a little bit worried because I wasn't hearing many headlines about El Salvador buying Bitcoin recently. But one came out, and it shows El Salvador continues to buy Bitcoin. Holdings rise to 7,565. So if you remember, when El Salvador was constantly in the headlines about buying Bitcoin, a lot of the times it was when Bitcoin was low, right? Because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to buy Bitcoin when it's cheap, when it's low, when everybody's scared. We just hit an all-time low greed and fear meter last week at 5, right? And everybody, like myself, was like, man, I haven't heard much about El Salvador. Well, here you go. Right around the corner, right after the fear and greed meter hits a 5, El Salvador comes out and they start acquiring Bitcoin. So I'm going to expect to see more of this in the headlines with El Salvador, you know, acquiring more and more. Now, I think they have been decently consistent with it, right? But, you know, I haven't seen them very much in the headlines, but I expect it, right? And this is the time for them to do it. And this is the time they've always done it, you know, whenever Bitcoin is down. All right, this is kind of concerning a little bit here. This is, you know, your typical bear market headlines, though. So, you know, expect to see these type of headlines, but I wouldn't freak out. So this company, I guess, is loss-making DeFi lender. Okay, so it says ZeroLend is the DeFi lender, and their loss forced them to shut down after they had a 98% TVL drop, which is huge. Right. It goes on to say ZeroLend, a decentralized lending protocol that once held nearly 359 million in user deposits. That's quite a bit, you know, especially for a smaller kind of up and coming DeFi protocol. It said is shutting down. Founder Riker announced the wind down on Monday in a post on X, citing persistent operational losses and a deteriorating ecosystem that made the protocol unsustainable. The protocol's total value locked has cratered 98%. That's crazy. So a lot of people just unstaking and taking out their funds and all that stuff as well. And it says that is 98% down from its November 2024 peak to just 6.6 million as of Monday, according to DeFi Llama. The remaining TVL is currently distributed across Linea. By the way, the Linea claim, I think it's going to be really lame, and that sucks for the people that have those MetaMask points. But I saw kind of what if you go to your MetaMask and you did the Linea things, you can actually go and see what's projected, and just don't expect a lot. That's all I'll say. Anyways, so yeah, with whatever they have left for their TVL is going to be distributed across Linea, 2.75 million. Ethereum 1.97 million, and ZK Sync Era 933,000, with smaller balances remaining on Blast, Sonic, and Base, among other networks. So the collapse follows a prolonged period during which ZeroLend operated at a loss, with the founder pointing to several factors, including multiple early stage chains becoming inactive or illiquid, Oracle providers discontinuing support, and increased attention from hackers and scammers as the protocol grew. I mean, it's been a tough bull run for new projects in our space, in the crypto space, right? If you're part of DeFi, if you're part of just that area where you are legitimately trying to build something, it was extremely hard. There were specific kind of a handful. Even if you were smaller, there was a couple strategic protocols that had success, but outside of that majority, it was just really hard to be sustainable. And that was because retail didn't come to the space at all. And if you look at last cycle, 2020 and 2021, the bull market, retail came to the centralized exchanges, and then a small sliver percentage of those people wanted to learn more and say, hey, can I make more by going into DeFi, going into the next levels and all these type of things? That didn't happen at all. We didn't even get the centralized exchange portion, really. I think a lot of that retail maybe came in 2024 and then very quickly decided to pivot towards stocks and stuff like that. All right, the Ackman comes in and says they call it a miner activated soft fork. They say the more nodes they run, the better chance they have to get rid of ordinals. Yeah, that's how it works, right? Because the node operators can determine what they want to allow to transaction-wise to go through a block. So a lot of people think that the miners have all the control. They have the control of what software they use and that stuff. But if the nodes do, networks do kind of corral together and they get enough, they can try to influence the miners. So we'll see if that happens. He also says we should start our own campaign to run nodes that protect ordinals on Bitcoin. The more nodes that we have, we can reject bit 110. Yeah. He says desperate soft fork trying to play gatekeeper, not going to happen. That's what I'm thinking, right? I'm thinking that they're not going to be able to get it done, but I can understand why some people are nervous. Some people have a lot of money in ordinals and a lot of money in Bitcoin fungibles like runes and BRC20. So I can see why people get a little bit nervous. But anyways, going back to that article, that's just, normal bear market headlines, right? So I wouldn't freak out too much when you see that a protocol is going out of business. And now if you're holding funds there and stuff like that, that's, that sucks. That's, I'm sorry for you, but, that's always a possibility in the bear market. That's why I think that happens less and less as time goes on because of regulation and because of institutions really going to be kind of supporting, corralling like the big winners initially. But, there's scammy situations. I'm not saying that this was, but there's like startup companies that always fall in TradFi as well, so but again, I think we get away from this type of stuff as time goes forward. All right, let's take a look here at the whale inflow. Okay, so it shows whale inflow ratio on Binance surges from 0.6 or 0.4 to 0.62, signaling a sharp spike in large BTC deposits as market correction deepens. Some people probably read that and be like, oh, that's good. Nah, not necessarily, right? Because if you start to see these large Bitcoin deposits and they're, maybe they had something on the Bitcoin blockchain that they sold into Bitcoin, or they converted their Ethereum into Bitcoin, or something they made profit on, or whatever. Maybe they trade and they wanted to get paid out in Bitcoin, maybe. Or maybe there's OGs that have held Bitcoin and they were in profit, right? When you send Bitcoin to an exchange, that typically means that you want to sell it into fiat, right? So that is something to think about. Now, I don't know why else they would send Bitcoin to a centralized exchange, because you want to, the best situation is to send it to cold storage and you custody it that way, but you can't send it to hot wallet. But what's interesting about this is that last week, I think we hit like a record in how much Bitcoin went into cold wallets, right? So during a lot of that kind of big beat down that happened, there's a lot of people that did put their Bitcoin into cold wallets. Now we're starting to see, some of these maxis maybe that want to send some of it to the centralized exchange to get it into fiat. But this is, again, one of those normal processes that we see in the bear market. All right, let's see. Let's go to this one right here. This one shocked me, actually. So Polygon flipped Ethereum in daily transaction fees. But I guess most of you guys probably could guess why this happened, right? Well, it says Polygon flips Ethereum in daily transaction fees, crossing 300K per token terminal. You can see from this chart that it got above it barely. You can see right there. But obviously, ETH was like really high there. And this is actually kind of impressive because ETH has been hitting some crazy like all-time highs with transaction fees, the past 6 months, because a lot of institutions, I think, are putting and doing DeFi and staking, all this type of stuff there. But Polygon, the reason why I think this is happening is because Polymarket is becoming more and more popular, right? Polygon is partnering with more and more entities, whether it's like countries like India or, helping with infrastructure payment solutions with payment processors. So Polygon has been really working hard behind the scenes, I feel like, right? Because you'll see a headline kind of come out about them and a new partnership, and they partner with this country or they partner with this company. But now you're starting to see the transaction fees kind of reflect the interest of using the chain, right? So this is, I think this is a plus for Polygon. Their token, I feel like, isn't like a huge like focus for their team, but eventually, if they have this continual like growth, right, from a just growth perspective in general, whether they're providing the digital rupee for India or Polymarket and another company jumps on and increases fees and all these transactions and all that stuff, eventually I would imagine that the token, similarly to like how a stock would reflect the perspective that institutions and the public have on them, it should reflect at some point. Crypto is a different beast, I know that, but it's starting to come together and mesh a bit, right, with traditional finance. And so that is something I'm watching their token and seeing, are they starting to see some strength in that, because they're constantly in headlines with partnerships and these type of things. So this next headline right here was kind of, it folds into what I was talking about with the VCs. So this is from Woo Blockchain, and it says, according to DeFi Edge, 85% of tokens issued in 2025 have fallen below their launch price. And I know a lot of you guys that, are interested in getting into like new tokens that have potential and all these things feel that, right? Because if you got into any new stuff and try to get in before, the public and all that stuff, 85% of you guys are feeling this, the fact that you're below what you bought in, especially VCs. And it says VC-backed projects show declining returns with some deeply unprofitable. In quarter 2 of 2022, crypto VCs raised nearly 17 billion across 80 plus new funds. Since then, VC returns have declined. New fund formation hit a 5-year low, and last quarter's fundraising was only 12%. So it was only 12% of 2022's levels. Although VCs deployed 8.5 billion last quarter, up 84% quarter over quarter, most of it came from 2022 capital, not new funds. So people that are, in the space and have been investing in the space for quite some time, they're still here. I feel like VCs like to gamble too. We saw that in 2020 and 2021, and we saw it in 2023 and 2024 and 2025 as well. I mean, they felt like there was a lot of potential. I can kind of see where the perspective came from. But and now they're starting to ramp it up, though. So that could be a little bit of a sign of what they expect for like this institution merge and mesh with the crypto space, right? Because we're going to get to a point that's going to be somewhat comparable, I think, to Silicon Valley, right? Because they're going to kind of have their incubators, right? Y Combinator already, plays with both sides. And so Y Combinator is a great, I think, institution or entity that can kind of merge that gap, because you had, I think, Airbnb, DoorDash come out of Y Combinator, but they also, try to fund and incubate crypto projects, right? So they're going to be able to find these really solid projects, but that have potential, that are going to align more with what the institutions are looking for. All right, let's take a quick look at the crypto market over here on Coinmarket, and let's see if there's any kind of changes that stick out in these blue chips in the top, let's say 20. And we'll go kind of like, I guess we'll go on the 24-hour here, right? We talked a little bit about that with the crypto bubbles, but diving into the blue chips, I think is important. BNB on the 24 hours up 1%, and it's sitting at $618. This token in, I think, July of 2025 was sitting at $1,300, right? So these blue chips, it's okay to glance at these blue chips right now, guys. I know that things are scary. Of course, if you don't have the money, don't ever use money you can't afford to lose, right? But blue chips are that next level outside of Bitcoin, right? And you have Ethereum, and then you have the blue chips, right? So, it's about it's more than 50% down from its all-time high that we had in July of 2025. So I'm looking at BNB. A lot of people aren't big fans of CZ right now, but you can't deny the fact that like that token, has a lot of power behind it. And whenever things get bullish, it gets bullish, right? And then you're seeing Solana at $84. This was at like $250 in 2024 and parts of 2025. It's up 0.17% on the day. What else do we have here? Bitcoin Cash, and then Bitcoin Satoshi Vision has kind of come back into conversations. I've seen people on my X timeline actually buy some, which is shocking here. You're seeing Cardano up a little bit less than 1% as well. Hyperliquid up only 1.19%, but Hyperliquid is one that I'm very bullish on. They are making the right partnerships, meeting the right people. Chainlink is being utilized by a ton of entities for either, RWA, Oracle, tokenization, that type of thing for price. Canton being utilized by the institutions for privacy. JPM uses them. They're up 4% on the day. So that's pretty big there. And we'll stop at the top 20 here, which is World Liberty Fi, barely up 0.07%. But oh, that's their USD one. So that's not the actual token there. But that's going to wrap up today's show, guys. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me for sure. Without you guys, I couldn't do the show. You guys are amazing. I hope you guys enjoy the content. If you did, and you'd like to give me a follow, please do that. Whatever platform you're on YouTube, subscribe, smash the like. On X, if you could, you still share the space even though it's over because people will see it. But also hit that follow as well on X at OnChain Rev and at YagoBeverse. That would be a big help. And Abstract and Zora as well. Appreciate you guys. And TikTok. I don't forget about you guys. But thank you guys, and I will catch you guys tomorrow. Peace.